This is The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. With your host, Tyson Gifford and William Roerick. Episode 132, recorded November 2nd, 2017. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of TVEnthusiast.com. I'm your host, the editor-in-chief of TV Enthusiast. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at TVE, William Roerick.
Hello.
So, today we are going to be talking about the first two episodes of Stranger Things 2, Season 2. So, we're not going to go over the whole season right away. We're going to do like 2 episodes a week. It's a 9-episode season, so we'll cover the finale in its own episode and kind of reflect back on the season when we do that. But we're going to do that, and then we're going to keep our discussion going on Mr. Robot as well. So, we'll be talking about 3 episodes of different shows a week, pretty much from this point for the next couple weeks, and covering both shows. So, starting off with Stranger Things, we're talking about Chapter 1, Mad Max, and Chapter 2, Trick or Treat Free. We're probably not going to go over the individual episodes like one at a time. We're just going to be talking kind of about that stretch of time of the show, because Stranger Things in general kind of just feels like a long movie anyways.
Right. Well, you know, this is, I really love the bit where, like, this is actually called Stranger Things 2.
Yeah.
so like they're titled it like it is a movie, like it's a sequel film to the last one, you know.
And they got the giant 2 in the background that was like such a thing for like 80s, early 90s.
Oh my god, that's so 80s. It's such a cool effect too. I just love it when I see that. I was like, that is so cool.
So they improved on their typography opening by adding that giant 2. So
yes,
and then it has to be, so when they do season 3, it's going to be the Roman numeral, right?
Yeah, it has to be.
Because 2 was always the number, and then 3 was always the Roman numeral.
That and you know that never made any sense.
It was just whatever looked cooler. I think that was like the rule,
right? Yeah, whatever.
Or they, you know, if they move it forward enough, if it starts getting closer to the 90s, they can do the 3 that replaces an E somewhere in the name.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my god, the 90s. Yeah.
So we're talking about the first 2 episodes of Stranger Things 2. First off, like how the season began is not at all what I was expecting. I was not expecting everything to begin with like a heist. In a big city.
There's a heist in Philadelphia, which, you know, I don't know where the hell Hawkins is, I'm going to be honest. And I watched this entire show. Like,
Hawkins is in Indiana.
Okay, so Philadelphia is as far away from Indiana as you can get, and we're following these people who seemingly have nothing to do with anything. So when you start this, you're kind of like, what the hell am I watching? And then it becomes clear. I mean, there's a heist, but one of the people involved in the heist has the same abilities as Eleven, and they show her arm, and she has an ID tag tattooed to her arm to show that she was probably also a part of these government experiments that are similar to what they were doing to Eleven. So you find out at the end of the scene that in that way it does tie into the show, but at first it's kind of confusing as to how the hell that even fits.
So Eleven's tattoo is like a 011 for 11, and this one has 008.
Right. So, and obviously this woman is a lot older than 11, so it makes sense that she was an earlier experiment. How the hell she's out there committing robberies, we don't know. I mean, the government is all up on Eleven's ass. You would think that they would be all up on this woman's ass too, but apparently she's escaped them and somehow has managed to even escape scrutiny to the point where she can run around and commit crimes.
Yeah.
I hope that's explained in some way at some point.
Seems like it would be, that they wouldn't just leave that hanging.
It would seem like a big plot hole if they did.
But it could also be used, you could do something like that just to kind of set up something happening later on, just to say like, oh, there's other numbers out there.
Right, there are. Well, again,
which could be, it could be done in that way, but you got to imagine that they're going to come back to this.
The whole thing is the government's so freaked out that they lost 11. Like if they lost other similar you would think they'd be equally as freaked out about them too. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how the season begins, which was just not at all what you'd expect to see. I mean, right off the bat, you'd see him in a city. It's like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're like, okay, I don't know any of these people. Okay, there's a heist going on. Oh, okay. There's, something happened. Wait. Oh, okay. This girl might be like 11. Okay. And that's kind of what leads us into season 2.
And, you know, from that scene, we go back to good old familiar Hawkins, Indiana. You know, right back, we rejoin all the lovable characters that we met in Stranger Things Season 1.
The kids are trying to get out of the house and get their money going, and you don't really know what for. We know that Mike ends up stealing from Nancy's piggy bank, and they all take off, and Mike's got a little bit of darkness to him, a little bit of a teenage rebellion starting to come into him now.
Oh,
you could see some angst building up in there, and they take off and they meet up and they're at the arcade and they're there to play, or at least they're there to have they're there to have Dustin play Dragon Slayer.
Yes.
So they have a little fun nostalgia thing on there. I don't know about you. Dragon Slayer was like a bane of my existence as a kid.
You know, to be honest, I don't think I've ever played it.
Oh, it's like weird. Like you have to, it's all full motion video and you just have to like hit down at the right time and then you duck. And it's just like nothing but QTEs without any descriptors for the QTEs.
I don't think I've ever seen a Dragon Slayer machine in any places I've been to, so I can't say I've played that game. But then like I didn't do like a lot of arcades in the 80s. I mean, I didn't really get into video games until like 1989, you know, when I got my NES. So like at the end of the decade. So Dragon Slayer was probably a little bit before my time. I wasn't playing video games in 1984. That's for sure.
I didn't play them that early either, because it was like, I was 1984. I was like 5.
Yeah.
So I wasn't exactly like playing Dragon Slayer then, but they still had that machine around.
Nice.
And it was tempting because of all the animation, you know.
Yeah, definitely. That would have been a big draw for me if I had actually encountered one of those machines. You know, that definitely would drew me in for sure, because it did look just like a cartoon. Mm-hmm. You know, I would definitely have been drawn to that.
So they're at this very 80s arcade. They're playing that. Dustin eventually screws up, got further than I ever did in the game. But he ends up screwing up. Lucas rubs it in that, you know, like the princess still belongs to him, that he holds the best score on that. And then Dustin's like, well, I still have Dig Dug. And then we meet a new character, kind of a kind of unimportant character so far. He's like a manager at the arcade, or a worker at the arcade, who is like, I don't know if I'd be so sure about that.
Well, they get alerted to the fact that somebody beat Dustin's high score on Dig Dug, and the name of this new high score is Mad Max.
Yeah. And the guy at the arcade, he won't tell them who it is because he wants Mike to set him up with his sister.
Yeah. Mike's like, I'm not going to prostitute my sister for you, dude. It's like...
His friends are all, come on.
Yeah.
Just give him the day.
It's like, nope. And so basically that's left to be a mystery, but not for long, because I should say at the arcade, Will has a moment. I'm not sure what to call these. You call it episode. Will has an episode where it's not entirely clear what happens here. I'm thinking that he does kind of physically phase into the Upside Down, because I don't think this is happening inside of his head.
Or mentally slide into it, you know, like spiritually slide into it or something.
Yeah, like naturally slide into it.
It's as if there's a piece of him that's still there.
But, for simplicity's sake, let's say he ends up back in the Upside Down, and he sees this terrifying storm over the horizon in there, and it freezes him with fear, and that's the first episode we see of him. He snaps back out of it.
Yeah, Mike grabs it and calls out to him, and that snaps him out of it.
And so right off the bat that things aren't okay, like because besides the thing with the heist, the episode starts off where all hunky dory, everything's fine, they're gathering their coins to go toward the arcade, and it's all rainbows until that scene, and that's your first hint that while things appear to be good, they're not good. Not really.
Yeah, there's something wrong with Will.
Yes.
He's seen something. There's clearly an issue there. Mike seems to kind of realize something's up with it. Lucas and Dustin are kind of seem to be none the wiser.
Right, exactly. Just kind of like Mike. Also, his mom knows that there's issues because his mom and Hopper knows he's having these episodes because she takes Will from school and takes him to see a doctor. Apparently he's been going to see this doctor
at the Department of Energy lab.
At the Department of Energy lab, and oddly enough, Hop is like real gung ho about this guy. This doctor's played by Paul Reiser, by the way.
Yeah, who's I probably best known for like
Mad About You.
Mad About You, but in the 80s before Mad About You, he was in stuff like Aliens.
He was, wasn't he?
And that's kind of I think where they're drawing that's the reason he's in this. He's not in this because of Mad About You. He's in this because he was in Aliens.
Yeah, true. He's in this because of Aliens. Like it's no secret that the show, like other programs that trade in nostalgia, they like to use actors from the era, and Winona Ryder was probably the most notable 80s actress to be included in this, and now they got Paul Reiser, another notable actor from the 80s, involved in the show. So
another one as well. They also have Sean Astin.
Yep, Sean Astin.
He's playing Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder plays Joyce Byers, Will's mom. Sean Astin plays Bob Newby, who is Joyce's new boyfriend.
Yeah, Joyce's new boyfriend. Not much to make of this guy at the moment. He seems goofy and harmless enough, and his role doesn't seem to be that important other than just being Joyce's boyfriend. But who knows? Who this guy is?
He's not tied in or privy to all the other stuff that's going on.
Seemingly.
Yeah.
We don't know. I mean, he could be a government plant.
Yeah. But from what we've seen, there's nothing telling us.
Well, from what we've seen
in the association. He's just a guy from that town. He went to school with Joyce, had a crush on her, and now he's with her, so he's kind of like the success story.
Yeah, he's kind of like the success,
the cheerleader, or not the cheerleader, but the hot chick.
Yeah, the hot chick. Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, there's not much to his character right now, so there's that. But the most interesting of the new cast is bringing us back around to Mad Max. The boys find out the infamous Mad Max from the Dig Dug High Score is actually a girl, and it's the new girl who just showed up in school. And
it's a redhead girl who uses a skateboard.
Yep, she's kind of
a bad girl.
She's kind of I wouldn't say she's a bad girl, but she's tough. She comes off as tough, not going to take any shit type of personality. The boys instantly become obsessed with her.
Well, Dustin and Lucas do.
Dustin and Lucas do.
Will doesn't seem to give a shit.
Will doesn't care, and Mike especially doesn't give a shit.
Mike's kind of almost more annoyed by her and by their reaction to her.
To be fair, Mike's still obsessed with 11, and he still hasn't let that go.
Well, it's like Mike at this point is like what Lucas was in season 1.
Right.
Like Lucas was all down on 11 all through through like season 1, basically going like calling her the freak and saying, we don't want anything to do with her and all stuff. Well, now it's like Mike's that way with Max.
Well, with Max, yeah, because
so, like the boys are like, hey, let's invite her to go trick or treating with us and stuff, and he's like, fuck that, no, I don't want her anywhere near me.
Yeah, he kind of like gets the attitude about it. He talks to Will. Will is just kind of like, oh, well, I mean, I'll have a strong feelings either way,
Yeah. Will's just like, yeah, what else?
Yeah, well, what else? I did think it'd be a problem if she came along. I mean, I didn't particularly care if she did or not, but yeah.
When we meet Max, we also meet her brother.
And her brother is a grade A piece of crap asshole.
Her brother Billy.
Yeah.
He's I think design wise, he strongly reminds me of Kiefer Sutherland in The Lost Boys.
You know what he does with like the mullet and everything,
the earring and the hair and the
fact that like he doesn't wear a shirt.
Yeah, they're just kind of like unpredictable tough guy kind of thing. So he's kind of like before we had the bad boy of season 1
psychopath.
was Steve. Yeah,
oh, God.
the bad boy of season 1 was Steve, who was like he was a bad boy, but he was more of like a Tom Cruise wannabe.
Yeah, he was
like trying to hook up with the girls. Like outside of his own like desire to like get the girl or whatever, he wasn't really necessarily
outside
so bad.
As far as bad boys go, this guy makes Steve look like Minnie Mouse. So
yeah, Billy is like a real bad boy. He's like clearly got something wrong with him psychologically.
He is very controlling and dominant over his sister. He abuses her.
Mm-hmm.
You see them arguing very loudly. You tell like that's a very abusive relationship right there.
He almost runs down the boys in his car.
Yep.
When they're like on the side of the road with their bikes.
Just to torment his sister.
Yeah, just to like annoy her and get to her. Yeah, he's crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy. It's not clear why they're there. They have an argument about it in the car. He's complaining that they're there in the first place, and she says it's his fault, and that kind of upsets him. And he kind of fires back. He says, "It's your fault. We don't know what the hell they're talking about."
Yeah,
like wait, what the hell are they talking about? Like, so clearly, like they're suggesting that they're there against their own wishes, for whatever the hell reason.
They're not happy to be there. Billy is very not happy to be there.
Yeah.
Max is kind of like half playing that she's not happy to be there.
Right. She actually likes the place, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Billy doesn't, because
Billy's an asshole.
Yeah, exactly. So but it makes you wonder who these people are, what the hell they're involved with, or what did they do that they're there. Are they tied in with the government in some way? Are they there because of Eleven and Will and the government?
Or is it just completely unrelated? I mean, we just don't know. Maybe they're there because they committed a crime. Maybe they're somehow connected to some other number. Like you're kind of left wondering what's up with these two.
Right, exactly.
While all of this is going on, Will continues to have his little episodes where he's just kind of, something's clearly wrong with him. His mom's realizing, like she knows something is more than what he's saying, but he's not speaking up to her enough to really let her know. So she's being a bit of a helicopter parent.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Hovering around him, very worried about him. In his visions, we're starting to see that this thing he's seeing, this enormous thing he's seeing, is like a tentacle, like very Lovecraftian creature, like massive creature on the horizon with these huge tentacles reaching down from the sky.
This is like basically like next level from the creature in like the first season.
Oh yeah, it's like a whole other level beyond. It's several levels. It's just something massive.
This is like the world devourer or something,
Yeah. So there's this massive thing is like tormenting Will in his little episodes in the Upside Down.
Right.
We had mentioned before about trick-or-treating. That's a big part of kind of like the second episode of the season, which is called Trick or Treat Freak. This is the Halloween episode, I guess.
This is the episode where they go trick-or-treating as the Ghostbusters.
But with two Venkmans.
With two Venkmans, because Lucas didn't want to be Winston, because Winston was lame, and nobody else wanted to be Winston.
Yeah.
This is also where we find out what happened to Eleven. At the end of season 1, when she just disappeared, it turned out she just poofed herself to the Upside Down, basically. And she ends up there. She's not there for long, though, because almost immediately she finds the portal back.
Yeah, she ends up kind of busting through the school wall, like kind of where like the emblem is for the the mascot. She kind of like busts right through that back into the real world. Of course, she goes right towards where like Mike is. She's like going back to Mike's house, but when she gets
finds
there,
out that the government is
they're all over his house.
Yeah,
and they have a little moment where it appears that Mike sees her. Mike's not even, I think, 100% sure he sees her, but he thinks he does. But he's kind of not saying anything because the government people are right around him.
They're right around him. He's not saying anything. But they notice he's looking at something, and they run out there to investigate it. And she's gone. I think it's at a point where she realizes she can't go back to Mike. So she's gone. We see this shows where she ends up, and it also shows where she's been via some flashbacks in the episode. Basically, to summarize the flashbacks, we see her trying to survive on her own. She's killing squirrels for food, cooking them. She knocks out this hunter who finds her, and she steals his coat
by throwing a flaming squirrel at his face.
Yeah. So she's doing whatever she can to survive. At some point, Hop finds her, or finds out about her. We figure, it has something to do with that scene at the end of season 1 where Hop gets into this mysterious car. We
know, like, Hop at the end of season 1 that he was leaving Eggos and other food behind in a box.
So we know he found out about her some way.
We get some context here, which is that it must be somehow related to like reports. Maybe like that hunter must have filed like a report saying he saw some girl with a shaved head or whatever and did something crazy. And this is kind of like had alerted him into kind of maybe her general vicinity and stuff. And that wasn't just him leaving stuff for her, but it was kind of almost like bait. Yeah,
it was kind of like bait. Anyway, Hop manages to find her and take her in, and now he is sheltering her, and it's almost, for him, it's almost like he has a daughter again.
Yeah. He has this like abandoned cabin that was like his father's.
Yeah.
And they go through and they fix it up, he and Eleven, and he's basically been living with her. They have like a whole security perimeter set up. They're using like Morse code to communicate before.
They're trying to
door for him.
Yep.
And so we see not just like all this stuff in action, but we see kind of like them setting it up and everything, like what they're doing with that. And so you're like, oh, okay, so they're doing all this. They have all these security precautions. They have like a saying basically, which is that they're smart, so they won't get caught, But you can tell like it's frustrating Eleven. And she comes in the second episode, she comes and visits Hopper dressed as a ghost, just with a white sheet with the holes cut out. Basically to show, hey, I can hide my identity tonight. Let me go out and go trick-or-treating and be a kid. And Hopper's like, no, we have to be smart. That's not how this is going to work. He says, I'll be back early and we'll watch some movies and have some candy. And she reluctantly agrees. He teaches her the word compromise.
Yeah, pretty much. Although he's late because they find out something is rotting all the pumpkins. He ends up investigating that. All the there's a ton of rot everywhere for miles.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of like trying to figure out what's behind that, and
he gets really caught up in that and ends up losing track of time.
Yep.
And so he doesn't come home early like he had promised 11.
Yeah, and so 11 is angry with him.
She's very angry, and angry 11 is not a pretty sight.
No. She kind of retreats, and she goes into her meditative state, and she finds Mike, who's trying to call her.
Mm-hmm.
And she almost makes contact with him, but she falls just short. It's a very emotional scene, if you see it.
It gives you this kind of idea that they're both still kind of like looking for each other. Because at the end of the first episode, when you just see like, oh, 11 and Hopper are living together, you're like, what the fuck? Why aren't they talking to anybody else about it? And then you kind of start to get the idea through this episode, through the flashbacks, that it's very dangerous for her to be out there in the open. And,
right, exactly, because the government's still looking for her.
And not only is Hopper like keeping her secret, but he's even more so in that direction because he had lost his daughter. So that makes him like even more protective than he would be otherwise. So he's like doesn't want to take any risks. And 11's like bursting at the seams to have some contact with Mike and the other boys and the outside world. Mm-hmm. And so she's a kid. She just can't deal with being cooped up like that all the time.
Sure.
And so this is kind of like the conflict between 11 and Hopper through this episode that we're seeing. But yeah, so Hopper was investigating those pumpkin patches. Everything's kind of rotting. This is like, okay, there's some kind of problem going on. Of course, I think most people are probably, through that whole time, they're like, I think everybody's been waiting since the end of season 1 when Will coughed up that slug, going like, what the hell? Like, where are these slugs going? Are the slugs rotting these things? It's kind of like all that's running through your mind the whole time is you want to like put some kind of context to the slugs, but we don't learn anything in that direction. Like, we don't see any slugs or anything like that.
Right, exactly.
Meanwhile, Nancy and Steve pay a visit to Barb's parents. They have this very kind of like sad, awkward dinner where they're kind of sitting around with them, and you could tell that Nancy is like just feeling so guilty about Barb and just kind of wants to tell him but can't tell him. And they're in this kind of position, and she's struggling with it so much, and Steve says, hey, let's just be stupid kids on Halloween. Let's just go to a Halloween party and just be stupid kids.
Right, exactly.
Nancy kind of like, compounds her guilt and frustration, everything, just starts drinking a lot at the party and just becomes like very verbally abusive towards Steve, calling him bullshit, saying everything about him's bullshit, saying their relationship is bullshit.
Right.
All this kind of stuff. Steve's like kind of putting up with a lot of it, and it gets to the point where it's like, what, so you don't love me? And she's just like, it's bullshit or whatever, and he can't take anymore, so he takes off.
Right. He just like ditches.
Then you have Will's brother. Jonathan got convinced by Nancy to go to this party, and it finally decides that he's going to go after he had dropped off Will to go trick-or-treating. He was supposed to go trick-or-treating with him, but he let Will go alone with his friends because Will's basically begging him.
Right.
And so he said, okay, I'm going to let you go. And then he decides, I'm going to go to the party that Nancy said. He goes there, but he just finds her drunk and takes her home.
Yeah, he just takes her home, yeah.
So he doesn't exactly end up having a great party time. He just takes her home. So while that's going on, as we mentioned, Will and his buddies are out trick-or-treating. They run into Max, who Dustin and Lucas had invited to go against Mike's wishes.
Yeah, we discussed this. Mike was upset, and Will was just like, Will's indifferent.
Yeah. But Max scares the hell out of him.
Will has another episode, and Mike takes him home. Mike's already upset about Max anyway, and so he basically takes Will and he ditches.
Yeah.
And and then that leads to a scene between Will and Mike, which is a good bonding moment because Will lets Mike in on what's been going on with him. He kind of shares, and he asks Mike not to tell the others because he doesn't think they'd understand. Mike says, 11 would understand.
And yeah, so they have this kind of like bond over that Will is like just feeling crappy in his position right now and the experiences he's going through. Mike's feeling crappy because Eleven's gone, and those two events are tied together, which creates a bond for them that grows even further. So they're there kind of dealing with that. We see, as you had mentioned, 11 had tried to contact Mike. That's around when this happened. Mike has kept that little forward up that he had for 11, and he goes in there and he's trying to contact her. We'd gotten little hints that he's apparently been doing this for a while, because like even in like the first episode when they were getting ready to go to the arcade, they're like, why are you on this channel with walkie-talkie? Because he's been using that channel to try to contact 11. So that kind of becomes clear as you're watching. Like, okay, so that's what he's been doing on that channel. Will, like you'd mentioned, had like an episode that let Max kind of see that clearly there's something up with Will. She's like, what's the matter with him? But nobody's really talking about what the problem is. So it's just kind of making her feel a little bit more isolated from the group. Dustin and Lucas are like actively competing over over Max for her affections.
Right.
I guess that just leaves the end of the episode, which is Stranger Things ends like every episode on like a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And this one ends with the Ghostbusters theme when Dustin's on his way home. And we'd seen before, we'd seen it as home. And maybe I should also bring up that, you know, Dustin's mom is in this time. Like Lucas's family's in this season, so is Dustin's family.
Not super important to bring that up, really. They only.
I was just gonna say that the families are in it now, and Dustin's mom is like perfect. She's like, you can totally buy like their mother-son relationship. You know, it's like perfect.
Right. So Dustin, well, we've seen this in the episode earlier where like the tease there's something in the trash can.
Yeah.
Dustin didn't realize it the first episode, but second episode we have it. Dustin opens the trash can, and the reaction isn't really what you would expect. I mean, it's a reaction. He certainly has a reaction of surprise for sure, but it's not one of horror or terror. To wonder what the hell did he find in there?
It's more like one of excitement and curiosity.
Yeah, it's more like one of excitement and curiosity. So it's like completely opposite of what I expected, which I expected horrified screaming and maybe something jumping out, and that's not what you get. So it kind of makes
you don't
me
even
curious.
see what's in the trash can. Yeah, it's just it's like from the trash can perspective we see Dustin.
But you assume it's some terrifying monster. And then when he opens it and you get that reaction, your expectations are subverted. And so now, and you know from the reaction that it's not what you were expecting, and it's also not nothing. So
yeah, you know, it's not just like the cat in the trash can or some like a mouse or something. It's something interesting.
Yeah, it's something interesting. So I'm definitely curious to see what Dustin found.
I went to bed after that episode on the first night, and it was so hard not to like watch the next episode until the next day.
Right.
Because it's just like, oh, what is it? And it's like, that's Stranger Things is really good at those like cliffhangers at the end of every episode that make you go like, oh, okay, just one more.
Yeah, I won't lie. The temptation to just start the next episode from there strong, but I'm sticking to my one episode a day regimen, so, or at least trying to.
But yeah, so that's the end of the events of Stranger Things season 2. I gotta say, so far, I love the super much more dark tone that they've given to the Upside Down. I love the colors they're using for the Upside Down, with the reds and blues that glowing out with the sky and the any of the lights. I think it looks gorgeous.
Right, totally. It's great. It's freaking
I'm loving
great.
Will's performance as this like deeply troubled kid who's got this problem going with everything that's going on there. It's really sad, like seeing him getting kind of bullied with like the zombie boy stuff that we didn't mention. He's been getting like things put in his locker that say like zombie boy.
Bullying him because a lot of assholes
suck
in that town. Yeah.
And that's kind of how he went into his episode on Halloween, was that, some older kids had kind of jumped out at him and were like berating him verbally a little bit. It scared him and kind of knocked him into fading into kind of like the Upside Down.
Right, exactly.
At that moment. So I'm loving that. It's a little bit hard to watch like 11 not be with the kids. You're like, come on. You're supposed to be with Mike and with Will and everything that's going on.
It's difficult, yeah, but you know there's going to be a reunion at some point.
They just have that tension.
Just waiting
just
for
like,
that
come
reunion.
on, you know, bring everybody together.
Exactly.
I like Paul Reiser's character. He's kind of like, he's definitely sketchy, but I think he's sketchy mostly in his position as like this, the leader of this
spook.
Yeah,
he's the leader
in that sense. But at the same time, he's like, you know, he's trying to help Will, or apparently trying to help Will. And in doing that, it's like at least he has like a good bedside manner, you know? Like it makes his character a little bit confusing where you're like, so is he like this guy that's like maybe the best person from this like government organization that's really sketchy, and he's still upholding what needs to be upheld, but he's still just kind of like a decent guy, but he's in that position? Or is he like just a real manipulative person and we just aren't seeing the real?
I think it's the opposite. I think he's a villain. I think this is going to be good because I think you're used to seeing Paul Reiser play a villain.
He was in kind of a similar role in Aliens, where he was somebody that kind of was part of this like mission or something, but was really just kind of self-interested and into, you know, just preserving his own business at the expense of the people he was with. So it seems kind of like they're playing on that same kind of like dark ambiguity for his character. I really like Sean Astin's character. He's just kind of like a goofball. It's just nice to have somebody that's just kind of fun like that on the show. And Max is a little bit interesting, and her kind of dynamic with the kids, you know. And Billy's just like a horrible asshole that's like super 80s iconic.
Right. Yeah, totally.
But that's like the new characters we had mentioned. And I mean, so what are you thinking season 2 versus season 1 so far?
Well, I'm enjoying it. I don't have any strong feelings one or over the other yet. They're both pretty the same.
Yeah.
Only
2 episodes in too, on this one.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so we'll be talking more about Stranger Things through the next couple of weeks. So next week we'll be talking episodes 3 and 4 of the new season. But now we're going to move on to Mr. Robot, and we're going to be talking about episode 3.3 metadata.par2. So 3.3 means the 4th episode, because the season, you know, like we've mentioned before, the naming convention's a little weird. They're using like kind of computer naming conventions, which would always start with a 0 instead of a 1.
Right.
So if you see 3.3, then you know that's really like 3x4 in like episode numerics.
Right.
But this episode picks up after the last week, which focused completely on Tyrell Wellick and his side of everything that's happened before and during season 2. But on his side, in this episode, we're kind of cutting back into kind of what's happened since then, or what's happened after then. So Darlene got caught by Elliot, we know, 2 episodes ago. He realized that she had hacked him, and he left the false trail so that he could track her. We thought before, when we were talking about it,
false trail.
Yeah, we thought before that he had maybe done his hack as a way of like directly reaching out to the FBI, but it seems like watching this that he doesn't even necessarily know that it's the FBI's involved, that he was just tracking Darlene.
Right.
So we were a little bit off there, because we were talking about that before. We were also kind of thinking it seemed like a Mr. Robot kind of move, but it seems like it's more that this was actually Elliot. So we were a little bit off in that, but we see him kind of, you know, talking to Darlene, and they're kind of working out their issues about, you know, Mr. Robot versus Elliot and Darlene's place and all of that. You can see Darlene still kind of shaken about everything. We see earlier in the episode that she's on a subway car, and she is just like somebody pickbacks her, and all she wants bounces like a Polaroid back from her wallet and just leaves the wallet. And the thief's like, well, why don't you want your wallet back? And she's like, well, because I stole from you before, and I stole from everybody here. And so you can see like all of this is just really weighing heavily on her now. All that kind of started happening when her boyfriend died last year.
Right, exactly.
But now it's kind of like she doesn't know how much she can trust Elliot. She's got the FBI on her. All this kind of different things going on has made her really conscious of her part in all of this, and she's not in a good place.
Right, totally.
Darlene ends up seeing Mr. Robot, that version of Elliot, with Angela because she had a deal with Elliot. They had worked out a deal where she would follow him at night if he left the building, because Elliot was having these blackouts, but only at night.
Right.
So he knew that if he was being taken over by Mr. Robot, that's when it was happening, at night. So Darlene ends up following him, sees that he's meeting up with Angela, so now she's like, oh fuck, what's going on here? Why is Angela involved in this? And then we see kind of further on that side, without Darlene, that because they kind of get away, they kind of lose her as a tail without really realizing she was tailing him in the first place. Mr. Robot and Angela are meeting with Tyrell, and Tyrell gets really upset because Angela ends up having to break the news to him. What she figured out in a conversation with Elliot is that Elliot is doing something to ship the records away. So she knows now Elliot's working against the plan at E-Corp. So she had got him this job at E-Corp kind of to put him under eye, but now she's kind of realizing that that's working against them now.
Right.
So
he realizes Tyrell is especially upset.
Yeah, he's very upset. The plan's kind of
romance with Elliot is over.
Yeah.
Very dramatically.
He's upset. He's upset about Elliot. He's upset about Mr. Robot, knowing the two as separate entities. He's upset at Angela, thinking she's not doing it right. And he's particularly upset that the timetable is like moved up. And all of this is happening after the timetable's moved up. So now it's like even worse. So now there are just 3 days left before stage 2 is set to occur, and everything's going to shit. And he is not happy at all. Angela ends up kind of convincing him that he can get the work done or whatever. Also, Irving plays a part in that as well, convincing him that he can kind of, in a separate instance, not at that meeting. But what's really interesting, what happens in that meeting is that Elliot comes too while the meeting is going on. While, Mr. Robot, Angela, and Tyrell are all in this room, and Elliot wakes up.
Elliot wakes up, when he's, Elliot wakes up while he's still in the room, which is bad because, it was supposed to be Mr. Robot at that meeting, not Elliot.
Yeah. And so that kind of blows like Angela's plan of kind of like deceiving Elliot. It also kind of blows the plan about where Tyrell's place is and all of this. So it kind of blows a lot of information to Elliot that he could use against them. So
Tyrell is very upset. He's unsure what to do if they move forward. Irving kind of talks him back up, Irving kind of, gets Tyrell back on track, calms him down, plants in the idea, well, if Elliot isn't who you thought he'd be, well, that doesn't matter because you're the god. You're going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Not him.
Irving is working with Tyrell, him to basically finish what he and Mr. Robot had been doing. And meanwhile, Angela's trying to stop Elliot from causing even more damage by contacting Philip Price, the head of E-Corp, and telling him to fire Elliot.
She arranges to have Elliot completely fired. In the meantime, she's keeping Elliot at her place for the weekend. When we see her, it's still Mr. Robot, but she wants to keep Elliot under close supervision now, especially after what happened, to figure out what Elliot knows, or to just kind of fix what happened and to continue deceiving him.
Mm-hmm. Tyrell, meanwhile, is tragically still trying to make plans to move his family for safety after stage 2, not knowing that his wife is dead. And
he asks Irving to check on his wife and baby, and to arrange a meeting. Irving says he'll look into it. Tyrell is hopelessly clueless about what happened, that his wife is dead. And I can't wait for that shoe to drop.
Tyrell's already unbalanced enough, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. That's a powder keg waiting to explode.
Meanwhile, the FBI has a source about the new F Society video. And
they arrest this man.
This Arab gentleman who they arrest, and immediately upon seeing him, we know, like, oh, okay, this is what was talked about in the last episode with White Rose talking about blaming this on Iran,
Right.
putting this on, like, a terror group or a government sponsored hack from the Middle East. This is that coming into fruition. The guy is not talking at all. He isn't giving any reaction. He just kind of has like a kind of semi-smug look on his face that only kind of breaks just barely when Agent Dom brings up White Rose, and he has like a very tiny break in his mask that he's keeping at that point, because it landed a little bit closer to the truth than what he was expecting. To discover. But so we can see this is the plan that the Dark Army is put into place to kind of cover up F Society's involvement and stuff by kind of making F Society look like something else.
You notice that the agent Dom is paired with in this episode is constantly questioning her conclusions, second guessing them, trying to make her. I think it's another case of I think this guy might also be corrupt, as well as Dom's partner, as we saw last episode, is obviously corrupt. I think he might be too. I think the Dark Army I think it's clear now that the Dark Army has vast influence within the FBI, and Dom seems to be one of the few people probably not in the loop on this. So she's using her wits, and she's coming to all the right conclusions, and then the people around her are just second guessing her conclusions and trying to make her doubt her own intuitions. In that way, like this episode, this guy she brings up White Rose, and he's immediately like, "What? White Rose is a myth. That's just a boogeyman. What are you talking about, White Rose?" It's kind of, at this point, I would say incompetence, but after the reveal last episode, I would say this is pretty deliberate.
It could be. To me. It definitely could be. There's nothing super clear cut about it yet.
Right.
But yeah, we definitely know that her partner, who wasn't in this episode, is definitely corrupt and working with the Dark Army.
Working for White Rose. Yep.
But we're not 100% sure on this. We do know that based on a scene that Angela had with Irving, that Angela references, like, did you see it? And this is like the thing that turned her. This is like his plan, I guess, to make everything right again or something. Irving says yes, he has. And then kind of like goes off onto some other story, basically to highlight the idea that like anything's possible.
Right.
This makes me think more and more that like White Rose has been able to play into a delusion on Angela's part, and that Irving is well aware that this is a delusion on Angela's part and knows that this isn't something.
Yeah, we know from last episode that Irving is very good at manipulating people.
Mm-hmm.
Just basically finding out, finding people's triggers, what makes them tick, and kind of manipulating them, mostly by making, endearing himself, making himself sympathetic to them,
mm-hmm. And we know that like clinging on to some idea of what White Rose can do for her that seems impossible.
Oh yeah, that seems impossible. Yeah, Angela, what she doesn't realize is she's being used
mm-hmm.
as much as anybody else, because she wants revenge against E-Corp for what they did to her mother, and White Rose and the Dark Army knows this, and and so they're just gonna feed into her desire for revenge.
Mm-hmm. They seem to be feeding into some kind of delusion that things can return to how they were, which is just not possible. Which is just unless the show suddenly takes some weird supernatural twist. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. Yeah, that it goes back to the first episode of the season where she starts spouting off to Elliot, about what if there was a way we could bring them back and make it like none of this ever happened. And Elliot just gets kind of weirded out and just says, that's not possible. And, and it kind of goes back to that. So you're thinking maybe she is harboring this delusion that somehow that could actually happen. And it really makes you wonder if Angela is willing to buy into that fantasy, then what does that say about her own mental state?
Yeah, because we know she's not rock solid all the way back from season 1, that she's got a few issues of her own.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
It seems like everybody in Mr. Robot is a little bit crazy in some way or another.
Yeah, in some way or another. Yeah, exactly.
But that's it for Mr. Robot, I believe. Is there anything else I'm missing?
Can't think so, no. The important beats, I think. I can't think of anything else.
So we'll talk about the next episode next week, as well as Stranger Things. But until then, here's what's coming up in the week ahead. By the time this podcast is available, Friday, November 3rd, 2017. Although you probably won't be watching this because you'll be too busy watching Thor Ragnarok, I'm sure. But Alias Grace is coming to Netflix. This is important to notice because this is based on a book by the same author who wrote The Handmaid's Tale that's become like a massive critical success and award success for Hulu. And so this is another book by the same author being done as a Netflix series.
Nice.
So yeah, this is something to maybe pay a little bit of attention to just because of that. Then later this week, Sunday, November 5th, 2017, The Girlfriend Experience comes back to Starz, and Shameless comes back to Showtime, as well as a new series called S-MILF, which comes to Showtime as well.
Okay.
Single Mother, I can't repeat the rest.
I think we get the idea, yeah.
Then on Tuesday, November 7th, 2017, Teachers comes back to TV Land. Netflix has a new anime series called Fate Apocrypha, which they have coming up on their platform. And then Damnation debuts on USA. And The Long Road Home, which is another military story, comes to National Geographic, who is now doing dramas. Thursday, November 9th, 2017, Rillington Place comes to Sundance Now. I believe this is about like a serial killer or something, if I remember correctly. But it's like a British show. Then on Friday, November 10th, 2017, Lady Dynamite returns to Netflix for its second season. So, until then, you can reach me on Twitter. I am at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, TVEnthusiast.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So, thank you everybody for listening. Night.
Good night.
If you would like to voice your opinion, send an email to theweeklyset@TVEnthusiast.com. TV Enthusiast is a part of the Enthusiast Media Network. Stay tuned to TV Enthusiast and the Weekly Set podcast for more coverage